Hey everybody, this is Anthony Russomanno again from Grab It Kids, here to work with you on our PATS Roadmap to College program. Today's session we'll be talking to freshmen and sophomores about their timeline. Okay, so if you are older, then this might not be the information session for you, but if you're a freshman or sophomore, this would be right up your alley. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a couple things. One, we're just going to talk about a general, simple college overview. We'll talk about some common mistakes freshmen and sophomores make on the path to college. We'll talk about a timeline. What should you be doing and when, which is, for a lot of people, I want to make sure I'm on the right track. This is the session that you can get that from. And then just some simple recommendations I'm going to make to you so you can make some good decisions along the path. Okay, so that's the plan for today. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to throw out there, and I get this quite often as an admissions expert, is will I get into a good college? And I don't have that magic 8-ball. If you've seen those, my kids like shaking those up and getting those answers on that. For me, it's hard to say, but the problem really becomes is, one, how do you define a good college? And that's really important. So what's your definition of a good college? The problem is a lot of people think, well, I know the good college. They're UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, they're USC, they're Stanford. But that's not necessarily a good college for everybody. It might not even be the right fit for you. What I'm here to tell you is the good news is if you knew what the college admissions rate was, that might actually make you feel better. So what is that college admissions rate? How many of you think it's under 50%? How many think it's over 50%? Well, when we really looked down at it and we actually looked at the majority of the schools and colleges out there have a really good acceptance rate. You might not believe it, but it's never been easier to get into college than it is now. I'll say that again. It's never been easier to get into college than it is now. A lot of people think I'm crazy because a lot of the news you hear, I didn't get in there, I didn't get in there. And the outlook is really good for everybody. Okay? It really comes down to choosing schools that match you really well. The problem and the reason why a lot of students don't get into some of those schools is they're the wrong schools or they don't match up with them. So for my freshmen and sophomores, the best thing you could do now is keep an open mind and start doing some good research on what are those good schools for you. Okay? So the average admissions rate is actually 65.8%. Only 19.7% of schools admit under 50%. A lot of the schools you hear out there, the Princetons, the Stanfords, the Yales and stuff, it's really small percentage that admit under 10%. That's only 14 colleges, 3 of those that I mentioned, admit under 10%. Okay? So those are probably the ones you hear about, because some of those, my valedictorian didn't even get into that school. That's the reason why, is they're probably picking all of those schools. And there's only a limited number of valedictorians. Maybe there's 33,000 in the country. And Harvard's only going to have 1,500 spots. You can't let all the valedictorians in. So that happens sometimes. So the state of the nation is actually good. It's good news. You guys can get into the schools you want. There's a lot of colleges accepting more than 50% of the applicants, more than 60% of the applicants. So we need to find what those schools are. Okay? So that's the really good news, the state of the nation. Okay? So let's talk about some of the common mistakes that a lot of students make. Number one is, if you're my freshmen or sophomores, especially my freshman year doesn't count. I can improve my grades later. That comes up quite a bit. And so you kind of slack off freshman year. Okay, I know you guys might be busy with soccer and other activities if you're athletes. But understand, one of the best ways to get recruited is to have good grades, and it starts freshman year. Now, a lot of schools like the UCs, they don't look at your grades freshman year, but it sets you up for the other years in terms of the classes you take and how you're setting yourself up. Okay, so it's really important that, yes, maybe the grades don't count in terms of getting looked at, but it does count in terms of the classes you select. Because if you don't do well and you have to repeat a class, or if you actually challenge yourself and take a math and you keep going up higher levels of math, it looks good in your curriculum. Okay, so that's number one. Another mistake students make is, well, activities like leadership and community service look better than others on college applications. So my soccer players here, and I get this a lot for the athletes I work with, is, oh my God, I have no community service. I got to do something for my church. I just don't have the time, and they feel like they have to force it into their schedule. I'm here to tell you that, that's a great honorable thing. First of all, if you're only doing it because it's going to help you on college admissions, then first of all, you shouldn't be doing it, number one. Number two is, if you're a Pats player, you're very committed to the Pats. That looks good in itself. That is your activity. You don't need to have 10 other activities surrounding the Pats where you have no time to live your life and do your work. Your grades are still going to be the most important. So if it's the Pats and your grades and maybe one other thing, that's going to be good enough. You don't have to be going to finding volunteer opportunities unless you really want to. So again, your soccer is going to become one of those activities where you can have leadership, you can have commitment, you can have all those things that they're looking for, and you're using soccer as that conduit. Okay? Another mistake a lot of freshmen and sophomores make is they really go out searching to become really well-rounded. So they're on this quest. I'm going to join this group. I'm going to join that group. I'm going to join this group. And they're really questing to be well-rounded. That's what I did when I was in high school. I think I was in about 15 different clubs. I played soccer, I played basketball, I played baseball. So I was a multi-sport athlete. I was trying to do everything. The problem is, besides my sports, I really wasn't committed to the physics club or the math club. I really wasn't committed to some of those other things. I just did them because I thought they would look good and I put my name on it. The only really two activities that really meant a lot to me were student government and the sport. Okay, but yet I tried to do all those other things, and it took away time from really getting and digging deeper. So the quest to be well-rounded is no longer. It's about being a specialist, or what I call being angular. That's meaning being very pointy, meaning that you are really good at one or two things, maybe three at most. You're not trying to be good at 10 different things. It's finding your interests, it's finding your passions and doing those things and doing them well. That's what colleges want to look for. They don't want to find someone who's so well-rounded. They're looking for, I want to have the violin player, I want to have the soccer player, I want to have the kid that likes robotics. I want a kid to have, and they're going to find that variety and create a well-rounded student body, not a well-rounded student. So again, that's the third one, and it's a big common mistake. So instead of joining 10 clubs, okay, join one or two, the ones that pique your interest the most. And obviously now you're playing at the Pats, so that's one of your interests and one of your passions. So do it and do it well and be committed and don't be shy about it. Okay? Less is more. Okay? These experiences will demonstrate all that maturity and passion and commitment, as I said. And you'll have to kind of make note of that in your application process, whether it's through the applications or through your essays. And they'll even ask you, how many hours a week do you do that? And for the Pats, it's going to be quite a bit, and that will look good. Okay? Common mistake number 4 is I will take the SAT and ACT multiple times. Okay? That is a big mistake. Okay? First of all, colleges will accept either the SAT or the ACT. You do not need both. Okay? So you don't, as soccer players for the Pats, you don't have the time and the resources to do both anyway. So what I'm telling you here is to take one or the other. Okay? And we can figure out which one you're going to be better served for based on some testing, some practice testing we can do, or based on your PSAT scores at your school, and we can figure that out. That might be one of the questions you meet with one of our counselors with. But you can figure that out on your own using a concordance table. So again, you don't have to do both. Save yourself time, save yourself money. Okay? Most of your schools around in Orange County, Riverside County, all the areas the Pats are playing, are typically offering the PSAT at your school in October. Some schools will offer the pre-ACT. Some schools will offer through an outside company a practice SAT or a practice ACT. I highly recommend taking one on each side of the fence, an SAT or PSAT, a pre-ACT or ACT, and then you compare your scores. You don't, my freshman and sophomore, you don't have to do those for real right now. You take practice exams and compare. It's like, which sport should I play in high school? Well, I tried basketball and I tried soccer. Which one am I better at? Oh, soccer. I'll play that one. Okay, that's kind of what you do before you do it for real, or before you play on your school team. Okay, so when you take that practice test, so by the end of your sophomore year, I want you to have a practice test for both. So those will be 2 data points we can compare. And when you have that practice score for each of those, we can choose which test might be better suited based on your score. Okay, so for example, if you got a 1300 on the SAT, okay, so hopefully now I'm showing you a concordance table right here. A 1300 on the SAT, but a 19 on the ACT. You're better suited for the SAT. You go down that path and you stick with that. And that's what you go for. Too many times, my student athletes, you're doing too much practice, too many games to have time to do both. Okay? So don't just, again, hope and pray that you get the right score. Okay? So that's tip number 4. Number 5 common mistakes that a lot of students make, and I'm telling you early on, so you don't make the same mistake, is thinking that I must attend a prestigious college to be successful. We call that brand name-itis, okay? And that's not really true, okay? It's more about your value, what you bring to the table, and the most important factors that influence income are not about the school. It's more about the major more than anything. I mean, I know a lot of people who are billionaires that either did not go to school or went to school you probably never heard of. Like, where did Warren Buffett go, or Bill Gates go from Microsoft, who's worth over $70 billion? Where did Mark Cuban go, who owns the Dallas Mavericks? Phil Knight for Nike, who's a billionaire as well. Well, I think a lot of you probably know he went to Oregon, but those aren't big top-name schools, especially in California. So where did they go to school? So understand, you don't have to go to those brand-name schools, okay? Another mistake a lot of students make is if you don't know what you're looking for, you will find it. And that's a really tough one. I know people are still searching, and they search after college. Now is the time to start looking for things that you want. Okay? So start looking. You can find out things you don't like now. That will help you on that path. Okay? So you really have to become a self-expert. And if you see my video on about creating your college list, especially for my juniors, you'll hear the word self-exploration, and that's what I'm talking about. It's on us to figure out if we can find what we're looking for, and you need that framework to do that. And you need to find what your strengths are, what your values are. So maybe you're good at public speaking, or maybe you're good at, you're funny. These are the kinds of things that people thank us for. Okay? I'm in the service business of helping families, and people thank me for that. Thank you for helping my child on their path, or thank you for doing that. What do people thank you for? What are those strengths? In addition to, what are your values? You know, how do you make decisions? For me, family is a big value for me. So I make my decisions based on what's going to make my family happy. What makes you happy now? What are your values? Are you about community? So when you're thinking about playing soccer at a school, if one of your values is community, you're going to want to know, what does the soccer team do as together? Oh, they have dinners together, and they go on trips together outside of season and do different things like that. You like that camaraderie. If that's an important value, then you'll be searching for soccer programs that have that installed into that program or at that school. Maybe there's school traditions. So what are those values? And experiences. And that experiences is that compass that helps you identify what you want to pursue. Okay? So I always tell students, do something that matters to you. And hopefully you're playing the Pats because it matters to you. And when you think about it down the road, what is the work that you cannot not do? What can't you live without? And it's the same as choosing a college and finding those, what I call, deal breakers. Okay? So that's another mistake a lot of students make early on, is they don't start looking for it early on. So if you're my freshman and sophomore watching, or you're my parents, start becoming an expert of you. Be that self-expert. I did that way too late in my life. I did a lot of things, and I knew what I didn't like, but I didn't really go out searching hard enough to find that. Okay? That will help you on the path in choosing a good college and ultimately doing what you want to do and what you're passionate about. Okay? Another mistake student athletes especially make is they think that my online identity does not play a part in admissions decisions. Okay. Now, one, it plays a part in admissions decisions. Even admissions officers are searching out Facebook and Instagram and different things like that. But your coaches are, or the college coaches are doing the same thing. Okay, so one is really important that you take a look at your profile. I have some quick stats. 27% of admissions officers Google prospective students. 26% look up applicants on Facebook. Now, college coaches, the percentages are much higher. And 35% when checking up found something that negatively impacted an applicant's chances of getting in. For athletes, it's even higher. You hear this every day, that now a student isn't being recruited or they're dropped off the recruiting list because they found something wrong on that was posted. So, manage your web presence. Okay, I'm telling you now, if you have a web presence, now's the time to start managing. Make sure you have a good email. Make sure you have a good account name. Make sure you're posting pictures that truly identify who you are and your values. And don't be posting things that are inappropriate. Okay, that's a big mistake. And sometimes it's too late and you lose out on the recruiting process because of that, or on the admissions process if you're not going to use soccer. So present your best authentic self online, and you'll go a lot farther. Okay. Okay. Common mistake number 8. I know A through G requirements are college requirements, so I'm covered. A through G refers to the UC and Cal State schools, for a lot of you that know that. From history to language to math, English, what are those requirements I need to get into college? Too many times, especially my athletes, they think they're on the right track, and sometimes they are. But for some schools, like if you want to apply to a UC school, you need a certain language requirement. And if you don't have that, it doesn't matter how good you are. You won't play at UC Irvine. Okay, I had a goalkeeper I was coaching at Cypress High School, and he wanted to play at one of the UC schools. Well, I got to that school too late. He had already taken all his classes. He didn't have the right requirements to go even apply to UC. So it didn't matter that he was the best goalkeeper in Orange County. So it's really important for you to make sure you have the right requirements. You got to do 2 things. The right requirements for the colleges and universities, and number 2, the right requirements for the NCAA if you're going to play D1 or D2 or NAIA. What are those requirements and core courses that I need to take to be eligible to play that sport at that school if it's one of those divisions? Okay, so those are 2 things. Now typically, if you're A through G required, you're going to be NCAA Division 1 and 2 and NAIA eligible. So those A through G are typically a good benchmark, is what I like to say, and that you're scoring at least a C in all those A through G courses. So make sure your grades are good and that you've checked those requirements. So again, history and social science, 2 years, English, 4 years, math, 3 years, lab science, 2 years. Okay, so there's that whole list. So you can look that up. You'll see it on my slide, or you can actually look it up on one of the websites. Okay. I always recommend take more than the minimum is what is required. And private and out-of-state schools have some different requirements. You might have checked those out. Like some schools like BYU, they don't have a visual and performing arts requirement. But a UC does. Okay? And usually more selective colleges are going to want more requirements, more extra years of this. So keep that in mind. So just think, because you're eligible for one school doesn't mean you're eligible for another school. Okay? Common mistake number 9, we're almost there, guys. I will never get into a good college unless I take a ton of AP or honor classes. That's a really big mistake. Sometimes students take so many that they can't handle the classes that they're in and their grades drop. That's not going to be good. What I suggest is take a challenging curriculum that fits you, that you're able to handle it, also to play your sport, that you can handle those. There's no sense, if you're going to play the Pats, that you take 5 AP courses and you're getting D's in all those. It doesn't help you to do that. I'd rather you drop down the level of classes you're taking so you can manage your grades better. That's really more important. Okay? Even though there's a positive in a grade boost if you're taking AP or honors, or it shows that rigor and it challenges you, you need to make sure that you're not overcommitting yourself because you have soccer. It's not creating more stress and anxiety for you, or affecting the performance in class. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, and then the last one I want to talk about is thinking about life after school. Okay, so you really need to, and we talked about self-exploration, but start thinking about possibilities now. Depending on the school or the district you're in, there beyond the classes and curriculum you take, there are opportunities to take other classes, whether it be robotics or forensic science or we call career technical education classes. Look at it, or taking even college classes, or doing things outside of class. So you can start identifying your interests now, what you like and dislike, and for some people that's the best way to go about doing what they want to do, is finding what their likes and dislikes are. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of those college and career exploration tools. I mentioned them on some of my other videos, or you might see some as some resources and handouts that we're going to provide for you in this video library or this archive. One's a Strengths Explorer assessment if you have access to Naviance or Do What You Are. There's a Myers-Briggs assessment. There's Holland Codes. There's a whole bunch of different ones that can help you explore. If you guys have taken the PSAT or an SAT down the road through College Board, you have Road Trip Nation where you can actually do some exploration of different careers and some of your interests. So I really encourage you to think about life after school or life after soccer as well. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to wrap it up with some recommendations for you for my freshman and sophomore. So again, these are just some common mistakes that students have made over the years that I've counseled. And so if you know what they are, this can help you. Again, planning your course schedule, thinking about activities, kind of, again, not necessarily being well-rounded, but be more of a specialist. Hopefully that helps you now that you're soccer players. But here are some of my recommendations. And some of them go like, well, duh, Anthony, that makes sense. Get the best grades you can. Everything else will fall into place. Okay, that makes sense. I always tell people, be a high impact player on the field and off the field. So inside and outside of the classroom. Just because you're a great soccer player, well, hopefully you're a great person too. Do some things to be impactful in school, whether the way you bring people together or whether you volunteer somewhere. If you're a high impact player outside the classroom, that will be relayed to the coach in those ways in your maturity. And they're going to want a player like you on their team. Find what you love to learn and learn more about it. Do the things that you find interesting. Figure out what's best for you, the student. Manage your time well. Do the research. Explore you. And then, especially for parents, it's never too early to put aside some money for college. Every little bit helps. Okay. So those are some of my recommendations. Some of the recommendations I made throughout this session or this video. We talked about taking and practice ACT or SAT or comparing your PSAT scores. You need to do that by the end of your sophomore year and have those scores to compare, because by the summertime you want to decide that path for you, okay? And choosing a prep plan that matches your goals is really important, okay? For my sophomores that are in APs now, another recommendation that you're considering selective schools, maybe some Ivy Leagues, you might want to play soccer at an Ivy League or something. You might be required to take subject exams. So take a look at that, what the school requirements are. To keep your options open, you might start as early as freshman year if you're really good at biology, or sophomore year if you're taking AP chemistry or something. You might want to take that same subject test. So those subject tests are required for those selective schools or for certain majors. So if you want to major in engineering, you want to consider taking those subject tests, okay? So that's, again, another testing recommendation for you that you would want to look into, okay? So with that said, I'll post some grade level checklists for you to be able to download so you can kind of follow along and check some things off. You'll be able to access that in our resource library. And with that said, I thank you for your time. Again, you can always reach me at ajrusomano@gmail.com, and hopefully you'll see me at the next video.
Perfect.